You know that feeling when your mind just will not stop, just constantly worrying about stuff that hasn't even happened?
Oh, yeah, all the time.
That's exactly what we're diving into today. It's something I think pretty much everyone experiences. So if you've ever found yourself lying awake thinking about all the what ifs, then this deep dive is for you.
Absolutely. We all get stuck in that mental loop sometimes, don't we? Worries about work or health, maybe money.
Yeah,
You name it, it can just take over.
it really can. It's like this constant background hum that just colors everything.
Mm-mm.
And to really unpack why this happens and, more importantly, what we can actually do about it, we looked at a transcript from the LEP Learn English podcast. It was called "Why Do We Worry All the Time?"
Ah, yes. That was a really insightful discussion.
It was super relatable. So our mission today is to kind of pull out the key ideas from that conversation, maybe find some practical steps to help us understand and, manage that constant worry feeling a bit better.
And the hosts in that video, they really nailed the feeling right away. They described worry almost like a clingy friend, or maybe a shadow.
Yeah, a shadow, that's it. Something that just sticks to you, affects your thoughts, your sleep decisions,
Right. It's always there whispering about deadlines or that weird pain you felt or your bank account.
or how you might totally mess up that date next week.
Mhm.
It's exhausting just thinking about how much headspace it takes up.
It really is. And the big question they were exploring, the one we're digging into, is just why? Why does our brain seem hardwired to expect the worst sometimes? Often for things that, let's be honest, probably won't happen.
Well, this is where it's really interesting. The video brought up Donald Winnicott. He was a British psychoanalyst.
Hmm.
Ever come across his work?
Oh, yes, Winnicott, very influential in child development. He had some fascinating ideas about where our anxieties might actually come from.
Right. He had this saying, and it sounds a bit strange at first, the catastrophe you fear will happen has already happened.
That does sound a bit mystical.
Yeah, but he wasn't saying he could predict the future or anything.
No, not at all. His point, as I understand it, was less about forecasting disaster and more about, well, suggesting that our current worries are often echoes of painful things from our past.
Even things we don't consciously remember.
Exactly. Things we might not have a clear memory of, but the feeling, the emotional imprint is still there.
So the video called it emotional deja vu.
Mm.
I like that. Or this image really stuck with me.
Yeah.
A ghost in the basement, especially thinking about childhood stuff.
That's a great way to put it. Those past hurts, maybe from childhood, they can still be rattling around, influencing how we feel right now.
And the video gave some really good examples, didn't it?
It did. Like, maybe that crippling fear of public speaking you have as an adult, it could be tied back to a time you felt really embarrassed or laughed at as a kid.
Or that deep-seated fear some people have about being abandoned in relationships.
Right. That might stem from earlier experiences of feeling alone, or maybe not having that consistent support when you were younger.
Yeah, and it's easy to see the link with money worries, too, right? If you grew up without much, that feeling of scarcity, it can stick.
Absolutely. Or difficulty trusting people, maybe, that connects back to times you felt let down or betrayed in the past.
It makes a certain kind of logical sense, even if it feels counterintuitive.
It does. And what's really interesting is why these memories, the ones loaded with emotion, stick around so strongly. The host in the video asked, why do we remember that stuff so vividly, but we forget where we put our keys like 5 minutes ago?
Exactly. My brain remembers every embarrassing thing I've ever done, but my password, nope.
Well, it seems to be about the emotional charge. Strong emotions, especially negative ones, basically act like a highlighter pen for memory. They make the trace much stronger, much more lasting than, say, neutral information like where your keys are.
Okay, so the emotion acts like an anchor, keeping that memory easier to access.
Sort of, yeah. So our brains are carrying these old feelings, these anchors, and they're somehow messing with our worries about what's next.
How does that work? How does the past feeling connect to a future worry?
You can think of it like your brain setting up an early warning system. It learned from those painful past experiences. Okay, that hurt. Don't let that happen again.
Oh. Okay.
So it tries to protect you by scanning for similar situations, even if the current danger isn't actually the same. That old programming just kicks in.
So the alarm bells start ringing based on old information, even if it's totally irrelevant now. My brain thinks it's helping.
Precisely. It's well-intentioned, in a way. But as the video points out, this protective instinct can sometimes go into overdrive and cause a lot more anxiety than it prevents.
Okay. So we're getting a handle on why we might worry so much. It's potentially rooted in the past.
Mhm.
But The million-dollar question, like the video asked.
Hmm.
What can we actually do about it? How do we untangle this?
Right, and it's crucial to say up front, like they did in the video, you can't just, switch off worry completely. It's part of being human.
Sure.
But the good news is you absolutely can learn to manage it better. There are strategies.
Okay, so what's the first step? They talked about changing perspective, didn't they? Being kinder to your past self. That one really hit home for me.
Yes, that's a really powerful idea. It's about developing some understanding, some compassion for what the video called the hurt little kid inside us.
The hurt little kid.
Yeah. They used a great analogy. If a child you cared about messed up a test, you wouldn't call him a loser, right?
God, no. You'd comfort them, try to figure out what went wrong, encourage them.
Exactly. So the idea is, can we offer that same kindness, that same understanding to ourselves, to the younger version of us who went through something difficult, instead of blaming or shaming that part of ourselves?
That actually makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So if I'm feeling anxious now and I can connect it back to, say, feeling scared as a kid,
Mhm.
acknowledging that connection with kindness could actually change how I react now.
That's the idea. Understanding the root can lessen the intensity. It helps you respond to those old triggers with more awareness, maybe less of that automatic gut reaction.
And they mentioned something called rewriting memories. What's that about? Sounds a bit sci-fi.
Huh. It's not quite like erasing things. It's more about mentally revisiting a painful past memory. But this time, you consciously imagine having the support or the love or the understanding that you wished you'd had back then.
So you go back in your mind and give yourself what was missing.
Kind of, yeah. You visualize that positive support being there. It doesn't change the facts of what happened, but it can start to change the emotional story you carry about it. It reframes the feeling.
That sounds like it could be quite healing, actually. Now, the video also got into how much our upbringing matters, talking about attachment theory.
Yes, this is huge. Our earliest relationships, usually with parents or caregivers, they basically teach us how to handle stress and regulate our emotions. Attachment theory suggests that if you felt consistently safe and supported as a child,
You generally cope better as an adult.
you tend to develop better stress management skills, yeah, more resilience. But if that secure base wasn't really there,
Then what happens?
well, individuals might find themselves coping with stress as adults using strategies they learned as kids because that's what they know. The video mentioned things like shutting down emotionally or maybe lashing out or even using food to cope. These can be old learned responses.
And this ties into that learned helplessness idea they brought up. That sounds pretty bleak.
It can be tough. Learned helplessness happens when someone goes through repeated negative situations where they feel like they have no control. After a while, they might start to believe that nothing they do makes a difference, so they stop trying, even when things could change.
Wow. It really shows how deep these patterns can run. But the video was optimistic, right? It said we can break these habits.
Absolutely. It takes conscious effort, definitely, and time. But it's possible to learn new ways of responding.
So how do we start making that shift? Moving away from those maybe childlike reactions towards more adult ones when worry hits.
A big piece is just recognizing that as adults, we do have a choice in how we react. The video used the example of getting your heart broken. A child might throw a tantrum, right?
Right.
An adult response might involve pausing, feeling the pain, sure, but then choosing how to proceed, maybe talking to a friend or taking some space. It's about that conscious choice point.
And believing you can make a difference in your life seems key here. They mentioned internal locus of control.
Exactly. An internal locus of control is basically believing that your actions, your choices have a real impact on what happens to you. So if you succeed, you think, okay, my hard work paid off.
And if you fail,
You see it more as, okay, what can I learn from this? What could I do differently next time? Rather than just feeling like a victim of circumstance.
that sounds much more empowering. But, when that anxiety really surges, it's hard to feel in control. That's where grounding techniques come in, I guess.
Precisely. Grounding techniques are super useful tools for those moments when you feel overwhelmed, like your thoughts are spiraling. They're simple ways to pull yourself back to the here and now.
What were some examples from the video? I remember breathing.
Yeah, focusing really intently on your breath is a classic one. Feeling the air come in and go out. Or physically touching something around you, like really noticing the texture of your chair or the coolness of a glass.
Anything to just anchor you in the present.
Exactly. It breaks the pattern. It gets you off that autopilot reaction that's probably based on some old trigger.
Okay, so you interrupt the old pattern, and that gives you space to choose a different response.
Right. And the more you practice that conscious choosing, the stronger those new pathways, those healthier coping mechanisms become. You're
Okay.
basically retraining your brain.
Now, something that seems logical when you're anxious is to just avoid anything risky, right?
Yeah.
Try to control everything. But the video suggested that approach, that sort of old school way, can actually make things worse.
That's right. Trying to eliminate all risk is, well, impossible, first of all.
Sure.
And trying to do it can actually crank up the anxiety because you're constantly scanning for threats and feeling like you're failing to control the uncontrollable.
They mentioned safety behaviors. What are those again?
Safety behaviors are things we do to try and prevent the thing we're scared of, or just to feel less anxious right now, like someone with social anxiety avoiding parties altogether.
Seems reasonable.
It gives temporary relief, sure, but long term, it just reinforces the fear. You never learn that parties might actually be okay or even fun. You never challenge the belief that they're dangerous.
So instead of avoiding risk, the video says we should change how we think about risk.
Exactly. Learning to accept that some uncertainty, some risk is just part of life. It's not about being reckless or careless.
No.
It's more about building confidence in your own ability to handle things when they don't go perfectly according to plan, trusting yourself to cope.
Okay. So we've talked about managing worry now in the moment.
Mm.
But the video also had tips for digging deeper, for figuring out the roots of specific worries.
Yeah.
What were some of those?
Self-reflection is a big one. They suggested asking yourself questions like, when do I first remember feeling anxious like this? Or what's the very earliest memory I have that connects to this particular fear?
Ooh, those are deep questions. Like being an emotional detective for yourself.
It kind of is. And keeping a journal, they called it a therapy journal, can be really helpful too. Just writing down when you feel anxious, what triggers it, what thoughts come up. You start to see patterns.
And what if you're trying this, but you're still drawing a blank or feeling stuck?
That's often where professional help comes in. A therapist can really guide you in exploring those connections, maybe uncovering things from your past or unconscious fears that are hard to see on your own.
Right. And the video circled back to healing the past self too, didn't it? Mentioning writing a letter to your younger self.
Yes, that can be incredibly powerful. Writing a letter where you offer that younger you the understanding, the reassurance, maybe the protection they didn't get back then. It's a way of validating those old feelings.
And guided meditations too, to connect with your inner child.
Mm-hmm. Those meditations can help you access that younger part of you, the part that might still be carrying fear or hurt, and offer it comfort and care directly.
And lastly, they really stressed challenging negative thoughts.
Yes, cognitive restructuring. Basically, learning to catch those automatic negative thoughts that pop up when you're anxious, I'm going to fail, everyone will judge me, whatever it is, and consciously questioning them, replacing them with more realistic, balanced thoughts.
That sounds like it takes practice, a lot of practice.
It definitely does. It's often something you work on with a therapist, but learning to challenge those thoughts makes a huge difference. It changes how you feel, how you act, your whole outlook, really.
So as we sort of wrap up this deep dive, the big takeaway seems to be, wow, a lot of our worry, especially the chronic kind, might not really be about the future at all.
It's often more about the past echoing into the present. Understanding where it comes from, those origins, that's really the first huge step towards changing things.
And it's so important to remember what the video said. This isn't an overnight fix. Healing, changing these deep patterns, it takes time. It takes effort.
Absolutely. Every step you take to understand yourself, to try a new coping skill, even if it feels small, it's valuable. It counts.
So whether it's reflecting, journaling, maybe trying grounding, or even seeking help, just keep putting in that effort to understand your own story and learn new ways to navigate the worry.
Yeah, the goal isn't to never worry again, but to move from feeling constantly overwhelmed by it to feeling more resilient, more capable of handling life's ups and downs.
Well said. Thanks for digging into this with us today. Maybe it's something for you, the listener, to think about. What specific worry keeps showing up for you? And can you gently ask yourself, when was the very first time you remember feeling something like that? Exploring that might just open up some new understanding.